Third phase of moon.
We have an unidentified flying object.
We just have to learn how to live with integrity and without envy, hate, or greed. That's our job here. Now, when we die, many of you will remember when Steve Jobs died here about 8 months ago. The last thing he said, the minute before he died, he said, "Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow." And what he was seeing was the reception area. When you die, you're met by the person that you believe in. If you believe in God, God meets you. If you believe in Jesus, Jesus meets you. If you're a Muslim, the great Almighty meets you. If you're a Buddhist, Buddha meets you. In my case, I'll be met by the great pumpkin, because that's who I believe runs everything. But anyway, you're met by this person, and he introduces you to all the people that you've met in previous lives. And then you're taken to a room, and you're shown all the wonderful things you have done all your life, and all the love you have given, and all the different things you've done. And then they tell you all the bad stuff you've done. And it's amazing that they could be presenting this in four-dimensional videos to you, how they could have remembered or how they could have recorded every little teeny mistake and bad thing you ever did in your life. But the decision is made then whether you have improved enough, learning how to live with integrity and without envy, hate, or greed, to continue on and stay in the fourth dimension, which is where you go after you die, or whether you have to come back to this Earth or another of the billion Earths, which are essentially prison planets, and which we're thrown different challenges each and every day to see how we handle them, to see if we can handle these challenges with integrity and without envy, hate, or greed. Now, the fourth dimension is what people call heaven, but if you'll take your what you think heaven is and multiply it by 1,000, that's what heaven is really like. It's really a great place, but unless you pass the test, you don't get to stay there. If you have passed the test, you get to stay there in fourth dimension for a few lifetimes, and then you go on to the fifth dimension, the sixth dimension, and keep going up. There's no end to the dimensions, and there's no end to your life.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one thing I wanted to ask you, was about the big pumpkin theory, or the great pumpkin theory, and you totally answered it right there. And this goes in line with what several of guests have spoken about, that they need to learn their lesson before they're moved on. And truthfully, between the two, I'd rather be told the bad before the good. That way I'm not left on a guilty note on that aspect. But I thought that was a very coincidental and dead-on accurate of what you said. One other really interesting thing I recall seeing about you, you had a book on Saturn. And in there, you showed something about rings. The rings being, there was like a giant a craft maybe in there. Do you recall that?
Yeah, Norman Bergman wrote that book, and in those days, 10 years ago, they were selling for, I think, $40, and now they're around $3,000. But it's a fantastic book. Norman Bergman was in the scientific community for 30 years. He worked for every major space corporation. He's very knowledgeable, and when he retired, he got some pictures from Voyager of the Saturn rings and found a spaceship that was 30,000 miles long and 1,800 miles in diameter. And he takes the reader of his book and walks him step by step to show how he figured it out, how he saw them, how he figured out what it did, and put it in this book. And it's just a fantastic book. But yes, they do have big spaceships, but those aren't the biggest spaceships. There are spaceships that are the size of this solar system.
Can you tell the name of the book again for all the listeners?
Yeah, the book is Norman Bergman. The ring makers of Saturn.
Ring makers of Saturn, for everybody out there listening. If I'm not mistaken, it is available on PDF. If you just search that, you can get it for free rather than paying $3,000. Now, I know this is probably going to carry over into the break, which is coming in a couple minutes, but I wanted to change gears. We spoke to Timothy Good last month, and I brought up a documentary which both of you appeared in. He sends his regards, by the way. And he talked about this 100-year plan that was initiated in the 40s by these bad ETs that want to take over Earth by hybridization. And several of the abductees we've spoken to and abduction specialists said that over the last 15, 20 years, rather than these, when people are abducted and they're taken on board the ships and shown their hybrid children, not only are these hybrid children looking more and more human, these last 15, 20 years, they are told they were shown normal situations on Earth, such as they're shown a garage door opener and ask them to describe what it does, or shown a scene of a grocery store and say, what do you do there? What do you buy in there? And I was wondering to ask you, do you think that that's actually happening? Are they setting up to colonize us or to maybe live alongside us?
No, they may do that to a few people. But the good ETs are in the background, and they eventually have control. They're letting the bad ETs take control. Now, the thing they call them bad ETs is they don't want us to have any new technology. They want us to not know about what's going on and not have any advances of technology, fuel-wise or electricity-wise. They just want to see us as we are now, but they certainly don't have control over the whole thing.
Now, these bad ETs obviously are being fought by the good ETs, and when Bob Lazar was at S4, he said that several of the craft didn't look damaged as if they were given to us. Were they given to us by the good factions?
Yeah, and what they wanted to do was let us know that there was something bigger and better than us in the universe, and we were given some craft that were that damaged, some that weren't. But it's hard to tell which is which because those highly, highly technical flying saucers are grown on a vine, like we grow grapes on a vine, and they're intelligent. They have their own, they're sentient. They can do stuff by themselves, and also they can regrow themselves. For instance, the wrecks at Roswell, wherever they took them, they grew back together until they were brand new.
And those are like biorobots. We're going to pick this right back up when we come back from our final break. Everybody stay tuned. Third Phase of Moon Radio will be right back. Welcome back to the final leg of Third Phase of Moon Radio. I'm your host, Dr. J, and we are speaking to John Lear and, of course, Jeremy Kenyon Lockyer Corbell, who is producing the film on John Lear, which is ImmaculateDeception.com. And I figured since before we get cut off at the end of the show, this will be the perfect time to do some plugins. Real quick, let me tell everybody, if you've captured anything amazing on video or camera, please send it to us via Skype or Facebook at Third Phase of Moon. Also, check out thirdphaseofmoon.net. Now, Jeremy, I'm going to give you the chance to do all the plugins real quick this time. Go ahead, Jeremy.
All right, well, yeah, it's really simple, actually. So I've been filming with John for a number of years, over 3 now, and during this time, I've been kind of capturing the portrait of a pioneer. John's an explorer, and he investigates, not only the stars and UFOs, but also in the film, you'll see kind of the components of the human heart. So this is an interesting documentary because it'll be a real close look at John as an enigmatic character and as as an individual, which I think will give you a little sense to why and how he came to the conclusions that he's come to. Clearly, you can go to ImmaculateDeception.com, and that's a great way to be aware of what's going to be happening with the film. And, that's really it. You'll see it when it comes out, and I'm real excited to have been working on this as a director and just a filmmaker in general.
Agreed. And everybody be sure and check out ImmaculateDeception.com com, as well as therealjohnlear.com. And while you're at it, be sure and check out jilllear.com, Jill Lear.com, for some amazing artwork. And speaking of your films, Jeremy, people can also see your stuff at jeremycorbell.com as well. And also, since we've been talking about the Truth Embargo, the Truth Embargo movie, is it truthem.movie.com or truthem.embargo.com?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, all of that is born out of the citizenhearing.org, which you know a lot about, and Ruben Langdon and myself are busy getting together all of the footage, and, you know, we're in the final edit. It's actually, we're about to go to press with a bunch of all of the testimony over the 5 days, you know, plus from the Citizen Hearing. So the citizenhearing.org or citizenhearing.org is a great way to look at the testimony. You know, don't take my word for it. You know, listen to the testimony. Those DVD packages will be coming out. Additionally, from that, there is a documentary called truthembargomovie.com. That's where you can go see it. And that's a totally separate topic born from the Citizen Hearing. But again, you know, we're here talking with and about John Lear, and that's our movie, is Immaculate Deception. And, you know, I hope you're all going to enjoy it. But, you know, take the time to speak with John, you know, because he's with you here now, so.
Absolutely. And like I said, I've been following his work for over 2 decades, and it is an honor to speak with you. We've only touched the surface of so many different things you have said. As a matter of fact, we do have a new caller who I'm going to give a chance to give a question to. Area code 754, welcome to the show. What's your name?
Hello?
Yes, welcome to the show. What's your name?
Hey, how you doing here? Hi, how you doing? Hey, Big Pappy 51 here. I wanted to get one point across here with any of you people out there that actually believe that the space shuttle is all we have. I have one thing to ask every single one of you. The space shuttle has been shut down since 2011. What are we using to service our Department of Defense satellites? And what are we using to service all our other satellites? It's the secret space program, SPAY-WAR, the
Solar Warden. That was actually one of the topics I had to ask you about, Mr. Lear. Do you know anything about Solar Warden?
It's part of the space program, and like he says, and like I said before, there's at least 4 different methods. We use different types of rockets that we use to get people into space. They're launched mainly from Kwajalein Island, and they go up 2 or 3 times a week. We're very busy, but we keep the public placated and tell them that we go to our poor Ruski friends to get a ride up to the space shuttle, or the International Space Station. I wanted to say one thing here is people who like to read the best book I ever read about all of this stuff is written by Lou Baldin. His name is Lou, L-O-U, B-A-L-D-I-N. And there's a book called In League with a UFO, one called A Day with an Extraterrestrial, and there's another one I forget the name of, but these are the best books you could ever read because they're written as fiction, but they're the true story of, for instance, what happened at Roswell, and that's in League with a UFO. And then there's another one about him being taken around the universe since he was a young man. He grew up in Italy. His father was with the U.S. Army, and that's called A Day with an Extraterrestrial. Remember, his name is Lou Baldin, B-A-L-D-I-N, and any of your booksellers have his books.
I will definitely be looking out for those books. Were these books written post Roswell in the 50s era? Or are these?
Yeah, he wrote them in the last 10 years.
Oh, recent books. Nonetheless, one other thing I wanted to ask you that I've heard you say was when we shot something at the moon, I think it was a rocket for a test, didn't it ring like a bell for a full minute?
Yeah, supposedly, but most of things vibrate like that. I don't have any specific information on it. The Pioneer rockets were sent up by Van Allen, and they were the ones that found the deadly radiation, which would prevent our astronauts from going to the moon. And they've had him change his statement. I don't think he's living anymore, but they had him change his statement that, oh, I was mistaken. Yeah, it's not all that bad. But in fact, it is. And we may have been to the moon since the 70s, but it would have been with the help of ET.
You know, we are actually joined by yet another caller, Wingman. Welcome to the show. Do you have any questions for Mr. Lear or Mr. Corbell?
Yes. Hello, John. Hello, John. This is Wingman from Kent in the UK. If you want me to be any more specific than that, you'd have to trace my IP. Yes, I got a question for John. John, I've been following you for a while on ATS some years ago, or I was then, or above top secret, that is. My question is that you mentioned it will be about 300 years of disclosure before disclosure, and yet that kind of concerns me slightly because I'm hoping that you know, and I definitely know that it would only take a small collective of people to tap into those higher streams of consciousness to invoke a contact of sorts. And so my question is, as listeners to the information that you've shared, not just today but over the years, what are you trying to empower us with? What do you want us to do with the information that you're sharing? And it's an important question because I'm trying to get at your intent here, because you know, if we really wanted disclosure to happen, for example, or if we really wanted to know the truth behind 9/11, we'd go on a witch hunt. We'd find out who the culprits are, even one culprit, and from there on find out who the next culprit is, and so on and so forth. So I kind of want to get behind what your intent is here, John, if that's okay.
My intention is to give as much information as I have to a very small group of people who are willing to accept it and go with it. There's a lot of people, and of 7 billion people, there's a small segment who would really like to know what's going on. They aren't going to argue with the facts. They're just going to take this information and tuck it away. Nobody's waiting for disclosure. It ain't going to happen for 100 years. It won't be 300 years, but it will be 100 years. And there's no reason to give disclosure now because there's no reason to.
But when you say disclosure there, John, are you saying from the government perspective? Because I'm sure that if we got our SHIT together, we could invoke disclosure, so to speak. So, you know, I'm not quite getting, and I'm not trying to be negative or anything. I'm just trying to get, you know, behind what your intent is. What do you want us to do with the information? Sharing information is very generic, but I'd like you to be a bit more specific about where you want us to go, what you want to happen with this information, John.
It's all up to you what you want to do with it. It's information that I have. I'm passing on to you. I don't really care what you do with it. All I'm telling you is disclosure is not going to happen for 100 years. So this is about the best you're going to have other than the information that Lou Baldwin gives.
Well, I'm delighted to be getting this information, and that's exactly why we asked you to come on, and we've had an exciting time. I know we got a short time left, so I do, 15 minutes, and I want to use this time to get some more out of you because you are a walking encyclopedia on this stuff because you've been literally studying it for so long. Now, going back to the 50s, Eisenhower met with the ETs and formed a treaty in 1954 at Muroc Airfield, which is now known as Edwards Air Force Base. Is that correct?
Yes. Eisenhower wouldn't agree to their terms that he wanted weaponized information, and they wouldn't give it to him. I think that was the deal. The treaty that's in effect now is the one that was made in 63 or 64 at Alamogordo, and that's the meeting that was filmed, and that's what the movie that Bob Ebeneger was hired to do. And just at the last minute, the Pentagon pulled the plug, and it never made it.
You know, also back to Area 51, when you mentioned that Bob Lazar near the end of his tenure at S4, all he remembered was boarding the plane and then leaving the plane and nothing in the middle. Didn't he have an instance of time travel on base, of some sort of experiment or something where he'd spent a certain amount of hours, and when he realized that the sun had moved a position of maybe possibly of an hour, but really 8 hours had passed? Can you elaborate on that story?
Yeah, I remember this. I don't remember the story. I remember something like that happening, but over the years, I'm 71 now. I'm starting to lose, some of my memory. And yeah, I remember something about that, but I don't remember what the details are.
Gotcha. You know,
I do remember that they made a big deal of getting all their jewelry and watches and everything before they actually went on base at S4. And I'm not sure whether that had to do with them being aware of the time that was passing or not passing.
that would make sense. Get them to work a lot more than they think they are, you know, instead of paying overtime, right? But
yeah, that sure could happen if they could take a 30-foot saucer. A friend of mine was working for the Air Force in Honolulu and was sent DDY to Norton Air Force Base, and then he was picked up by a limousine and driven 2 hours north of Norton Air Force Base. They drove onto an elevator. He was in a blacked-out car. He got to the bottom of the elevator stopped. He got out, and there was a 30-foot saucer hanging with straps from the ceiling, and he was told to go into a little room, change his clothes into just a smock, booties, and a cap, take a camera, he was a photographer, and film the inside. So he climbed up the ladder, and he says, John, he said, when I got to the top of the ladder, the door was open. He said, this thing was about 30 feet in diameter. I put the camera inside and then hoisted myself up inside. And John, I was so shocked. He said, I could have taken a football and thrown it and not hit the other side. It was at least 300 feet in diameter. And he said, I was so shocked that I went back out on the ladder to look at the thing, and it was still 30 feet, looked back in the saucer, and it was 300 feet in diameter. So that's one of the things they can do, space-time.
so it was literally 10 times larger once you got inside versus what it was on the outside as far as mass.
Yeah.
That is truly an amazing thing. One thing you mentioned before break, which I totally agree with, when you were talking about these saucers being seamless and having like almost as if they're bio robots, thought controlled, as if they're living organisms repairing themselves. I heard that a lot, and some people even state that these things are printed or made out of 3D printers, and that's why there's no rivets or anything like that. And of course, they're like you said, glorified robots, just like the way the Greys roll off an assembly line, so do these. And I was wondering if you could elaborate a little more on that, because I know you got cut off by the break.
Yeah, the Greys are glorified robots. They're vastly more intelligent than we are, but they're essentially robots. They work for either the bad ETs or the good ETs or anybody who wants to, and I don't know how it's divvied up. I don't know how you get to use them or who controls them, but they are made on Zeta Reticuli. I've heard this story of Serpo and us going to Zeta Reticuli. I don't believe it. I heard the story many years ago that 3 people went there, and 2 came back. 1 died there. The story that Serpo is considerably more people went there. I don't believe it, but you know, what do I know? The saucers, yes, are sentient. They can think, and they can grow themselves into complete saucers after their damage.
You know, another thing, this is, again, unrelated to this particular point, but something that I've heard you say. Well, first of all, as everybody knows, people disappear daily, and there's no trace of them whatsoever. And every person can't be accounted for by a murder or taken by a kidnapper or something like that. Do you think people are taken to be mutilated, or do you think people are just taken and taken off to other planets, or maybe are these people not humans at all?
Well, the human mutilations is a very classified subject, and I don't hear too much about it, except the fact it is true. It does happen, but not very often. I remember reading a report, Air Force report, that came in Grudge 13 about a guy that was out of the Alamogordo base and got mutilated. It was a pretty gruesome story. But yes, that does happen. As far as the disappearance, there are children and people that disappear every day, and nobody knows where they went, and I certainly don't know where they went.
I remember actually when I was speaking to Ryan Wood, and he was talking about that there was a crash and retrieval where they actually found human body parts on board, and I thought that was very interesting with what you said because that kind of correlates what are they using for. And that also goes back to Dulce. A lot of people say that each level you go down is more restricted, and the lowest level there's no humans allowed. Do you know anything about that, that it's 7 levels deep, or is that just false information?
Yeah, that's the 7 levels deep is where Nightmare Hall is, and that's where they do the crossbreeding of the humans and different kinds of animals. The saucer that they found the human parts in, that was an incident that happened in Vietnam, and there's several accounts of that, so I don't know what that means.
Interesting. Nightmare Hall, the level 6, is that a joint U.S. Or joint human alien, or is it also or is it also restricted to humans? Restricted to aliens only?
Humans work there with the ETs, and there are several different types of ETs that work there. That's all I know.
Do you know what other bases on Earth or alien bases on Earth are? Because one of our researchers, a MUFON researcher, Preston Dennett, is considered the worldwide expert on the Pacific Ocean USOs, underwater unidentified submerged objects. And he says that right off the coast of Catalina, that there is actually 2 domes that possibly may be a base. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, they're underwater domes are all over the place. There's some north of Maui, and the U.S. Navy tries to keep track of all of them, but it's a very classified subject.
You know, also in Nevada, there appears to be a submarine base. Is that true?
Yes, under Hawthorne, Nevada, and the entrance, the 11 western states of the United States sits on a plate, and this plate sits on the Pacific Ocean. And the Navy enters on Monterey Bay. There's if you go to Google Earth, go to Monterey Bay, you'll see a canyon there, and it leads right direct into the shoreline at Monterey Bay, and that's where the submarines go down and enter this area, and they can go all over the western states. They can go to Lake Tahoe, they can go to Hawthorne, they can go to China Lake, they can go to Sandpoint, all different kinds of places. They're not limited because it's the ocean. And there was 2 submarines lost there. One was Thresher, and the other was, I'm trying to think, it was Skipjack, or one of the first two nuclear submarines were lost in there exploring it. And the reason they go at Hawthorne now, remember, they stay at the level of the Pacific Ocean, and so when they need a base, they just, like at Hawthorne, Nevada, there's an elevator that goes down 3,400 feet, because the elevation of Hawthorne is 3,400 feet. So they have 2 elevators, one's for cargo and one's for people, and they go down the 3,400 feet to the submarine pens that are under there. Now, the reason they have it at Hawthorne is just across the street is where all these weapons that a submarine would use are made, and instead of having to send these weapons north to Reno and San Francisco or south to Los Angeles, San Diego, they just drive across the street, put it on the elevator, take it down to the submarine base under there, and then leave by the passage going out of Monterey Bay.
Do you think that the Pacific and Atlantic are connected at any point under the U.S.? In a way that's possibly, you don't know. Okay. Nonetheless.
No. The way the submarines get to St. Louis is up the Mississippi River. And what they do is they keep dredging the low spots there so the submarines can actually go all the way to St. Louis. And there's a place in St. Louis where they do work on highly classified nuclear submarines, and they have to actually take them there. And so they did the dredging to keep the Mississippi floor lower so that the submarines could pass by.
Now, speaking of under U.S., high-speed rails, I know we briefly touched on this. Now, isn't there high-speed rails that connect every base, literally from Area 51 to Edwards to Dulce to you name it, from all over the U.S. and then even abroad, like in Pine Gap and everything else in Australia and other places? Do you know about that?
Absolutely. The Navy was the one that discovered this. It's from a prior civilization, and the entrance to this is in the submarine pens in San Diego. And the guys that ride in them say they get in them, and it's just a little kind of a vehicle on a kind of a track, and they close the hood on this thing, and in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes, they're just about any place in the United States or the world. The one specific incident I read was he went to North Dakota, found himself in North Dakota, and they had an ET from Tau Ceti there, and they found one of the guys that's Drake from the university in California was giving the ET a bad time, and a very interesting story. But yeah, these things go all over the place. Now, whether the ones that connect Edwards and Area 51 and Dulce and all the rest of the place, I don't know whether that's the same underground system, but there are certainly underground roads that trucks travel on, about 100,000 miles worth under the United States.
You know, now going back to presidents in the know, obviously we know President Eisenhower knew. Nixon was his vice president, so he clearly knew. And then there's that story that he showed Jackie Gleason. And then people say that Kennedy was assassinated because he wanted to tell the world. And then, of course, Bush Sr., being director of CIA, we believe to be in the know. Is that correct, of those presidents that I said, or are there any presidents I'm missing that are in the know, have been in the know?
No, First of all, President Kennedy wasn't assassinated because of that. He was assassinated by the Mossad because he kept insisting on inspecting Dimona, which is where the Israelis made their atomic bombs. And Ben-Gurion got tired of it, and it told Mossad in the summer of '63 to kill him, and then he resigned from prime minister, and in November is when they finished him off, and they did a very good job. They were helped by James Jesus Angleton, who is the CIA chief of station in Rome in 1947, when Israel was formed, 1948, and he was sent down there to help them put together their own secret service, their own CIA. Somehow he got corrupted, and when he was assigned to the CIA head of foreign intelligence in 1960, his raison d'etre was to find the Russian mole, and that whole his career until he was fired by Colby in 1972 was to find the Russian mole. The joke is he was the Russian mole because he was co-opted by Israel, who was passing all the information to the Russians. Now, as far as the what was the other question you had?
The presidents in the know and the...
Oh, yeah, the presidents in the know. The presidents are not told very much. 20 years ago is where my information is from and comes from Bob Lazar's. The top secret is the lowest clearance you can get. Above that, there's 38 levels. There's 28 levels of top secret crypto that go top secret crypto 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 28. And then above that, there's 10 names. Umbra, Ultra, the top being Majestic. The Majestic, very few people get, and that's the one that Bob Lazar was being groomed for. But the President of the United States only has like top secret crypto 17. He's not told very much. He doesn't need to he doesn't need to know very much because he's a figurehead. He doesn't have anything to do with running the country other than the figurehead stuff. When he takes office, when a president takes office, somebody comes into his office the next day and tells him how it's going to work and what he's going to do. And basically that's how it worked. But they're not told very much. They're told, yes, there's aliens. We have a few dead aliens here if you want to see them, but that's all. Now, I heard the story of President Eisenhower when he asked to go see Area 51. They told him he wasn't cleared for it. He said, well, you better let me in or I'm going to take the First Army from Colorado and go in with him. And I don't know what happened after that.
And everybody heard that at the citizen hearing. This brings us to the end of our show. Thank you, Mr. Lear. Everybody, next week, join us for Dr. Greer, and thanks again.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Third phase of moon.